And at 10, Radioactive Foxy. No, he's not an Imagine Dragons fan. Radioactive Foxy is one of the Wasteland-themed skins added in the Wasteland event for FNAF AR Special Delivery. You can purchase his skin and lures from the shop. Radioactive Foxy looks almost identical to normal Foxy. The only difference is that now Foxy is neon green. And he's radioactive, okay? And his body is slightly translucent, making his endoskeleton fairly visible, also featuring a faint radioactive symbol on his belly. And a dual hook consisting of like a different design compared to that of Foxy's normal hook, but it has two hooks, okay? Because get it, he's radioactive, he's mutated. But this is exactly the kind of thing that the SCP Foundation would contain. I mean, just look at it. This isn't a normal thing, okay? And while it is radioactive, it's also a sentient animatronic robot looking like he just came straight out of Chernobyl, so yeah, the SCP Foundation would be all over this dude. He'd be contained, and depending on his aggression, probably classified as Keter, considering what we deal with in the game. But this guy, he just looks like trouble. He looks for trouble. Call him SCP-1987. I know it's already a thing, but just let me make a bite of 87 joke, okay? In at 9, VR Toy Freddy. VR Toy Freddy is a neon-themed skin for Toy Freddy released on May 7th, 2020. He's also the first skin for Toy Freddy in Special Delivery, and he's also the first of 3 skins from the Arcade Mayhem event. And honestly, these 3 animatronics as one SCP would still make sense, like SCP-1987A, B, and C. He appears to be similar to the nature of Toy Freddy Fazbear, almost sharing the exact same model with him, but this time he's wearing VR goggles. His appearance is a dark neon purple, which also applies to his hat, bow tie, buttons, and microphone. He's textured with a few like cyber style circuit lines, and he wears a virtual reality headset regularly. During encounters though, he is replaced by his attack mode variant named Livewire Toy Freddy, and in this form his purple color turns to a fiery orange. He's covered with several glowing yellow circuit web textures, and he no longer wears his headset and reveals his bright yellow-green glowing eyes. This kind of theme remains present throughout the other 2 in this set as well, and I think that their anomalous property would come from like when specific things glitch. Like, Freddy would come out when a VR game glitches, Chica would be in arcade machines, and then Bonnie would appear for like a critical system error, considering how their skin is system error Toy Bonnie. In at 8, Phantom Animatronics. The Phantom Animatronics are hallucination variants of the original animatronics who haunt Fazbear's fright throughout the Nights of FNAF 3. The Freddy Files book also points out how these hallucinations appear to be burnt, suggesting that they're warning you about what's coming. The Phantom Animatronics first appeared in FNAF 3 as side antagonists. Some of them returned in Ultimate Custom Night, but I guarantee they all came back and help wanted. They include but are not limited to the Puppet, Foxy, Chica, Balloon Boy. There are multiple Phantom Animatronics that could possibly be considered SCPs. I mean, like, the Phantoms are already the scariest part of FNAF, so any one of them or even the group being considered an SCP that comes out whenever the oxygen level gets too low seems kind of reasonable. They would also probably cause the cameras to glitch out and audio to sound distorted, which is something that they also kind of did in the game. But this is definitely something worthy of SCP-1987. Yes, I'm going to keep calling it 1987, alright? In at 7, Plush Babies. The Plush Babies are a group of at least 3 plushies that make an appearance in both FNAF Help Wanted and its DLC The Curse of Dreadbear as antagonists. The Plush Babies' appearance seems to be based on the Circus Baby Funko plushie in our real world, and they are pale white skinned clown-like plushies with light blue eyes and orange hair and pigtails, because you know what, pigtails make everything scarier. They also have a red top to their stomach with an orange triangle on their belly. The orange triangle also has a small fan printed on it, because of course it does. Because why take one of the weirdest things in FNAF and shrink it? Because why not? They also have a red nose and a smile with their mouth connected to their red cheeks. One has a red outfit, one has blue, and one has yellow. And while they might have their own behavior, I mean, just look at this thing and tell me it couldn't be an SCP, okay? It's a plush animatronic, for God's sakes. Plus, there has been weirder stuff, at least in the context of like weird base objects, like a telephone or literally the egg that only lets you say egg when describing it. Like, come on. The Plush Babies and all their weirdness would absolutely be classified as an SCP. And at 6, the daycare attendant. Do I even really need to explain this one? Especially if this thing was a human, okay? This would be 100% considered anomalous. The daycare attendant, otherwise known in-game as Sundrop or Moondrop, is a superstar daycare animatronic that appears in Security Breach as a recurring antagonist in its moon form. As Sun, the daycare attendant is upbeat and energetic, kinda like Funtime Freddy, or me when I've had a couple monster. He enjoys doing activities with children, I don't. such as putting on puppet shows and drinking fizzy fazz. I like the fizzy fazz. When Gregory knocks down the structures as a way to distract him, Sun panics and quickly rushes to clean them up. He's also very serious about keeping the lights on as a way to prevent himself from transforming into Moon. As Moon, the daycare attendant is malevolent and aggressive, who constantly chases Gregory once the lights are turned off and attempts to punish him for being a naughty boy, which is already a problem. Even though Moon still has a distaste for messes and is responsible for cleaning them up, just as his daytime counterpart is, but Moon does so to a more demented degree. The fact that they can change between the two, that it also changes his entire appearance when the lights go out, is definitely SCP material. The man who casts a shadow that grabs people, I think it's a man at least, the shadow that grabs people and he has to have lights on from all angles, or how Peanut needs to be watched constantly. Sun would need the lights to be on at all times to ensure that he didn't turn into Moon. They would have to have 14 backup generators. This is exactly the kind of thing that someone would write about in the SCP Wiki. Halfway through, and at number 5, Boulder Toy Bonnie. Boulder Toy Bonnie is a stone toy Bonnie released on November 19th, 2020. He was added as Toy Bonnie's second skin and the second member of the Haunted Forest event. Boulder Toy Bonnie is a completely gray toy Bonnie made up entirely of stone. His body shows severe damage as parts of him have crumbled off and various cracks show throughout his stomach and limbs. He also appears to be very covered in moss and vegetation as it's growing throughout him and actually inside some of the cracks in his body. And finally, his eye sockets are completely empty and he has a full set of upper teeth, unlike his normal counterpart. This isn't just the Five Nights at Freddy's version of Peanut. I don't know what is, okay? This is just Peanut but with a different paint job. This is Peanut with extra steps. For all I know, Boulder Bonnie could be reinforced with rebar, okay? Which seems to be what Peanut was reinforced with as well, from what I remember of the wiki, okay? Boulder Toy Bonnie is the SCP-173 of FNAF. In it for Glitch Trap. Glitch Trap, also referred to as the Anomaly by Tape Girl, is the main antagonist of FNAF Help Wanted. He is a digital virus who is confirmed to be William Afton that lies within the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience. While inside the Fazbear virtual experience, his main goal is to merge with the player in order to escape the digital world, that player being Vanny. Being a literal sentient code being, I think would absolutely draw the attention of the SCP Foundation, even if it wasn't an SCP, a consciousness that can take control over someone by assimilating them through a VR headset, such a load of that it doesn't even make sense in the FNAF universe, let alone in a world where the SCP Foundation exists and is aiming to contain anomalous things. A VR game possessed by a sentient code serial killer that wants to escape through someone? Yeah, that computer, the game, and the headset are all being confiscated and being brought back to Site A where they can contain it properly. Probably class it as Euclid, since it can't really do any physical harm unless it's used, and then they'd probably run some tests with Class D personnel to try to figure out what's really going on. They could have a chat with William and then just kill the Class D when they're done talking. And then hope that killing the Class D then puts William back in the game instead of just releasing him into the world. Okay, there could be a lot of valuable information learned this way. Maybe I could. No, Connor, stop, okay? You're already on multiple watch lists. You don't need to put yourself on any more. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Toxic Springtrap. Toxic Springtrap is the second skin in the Wasteland event from FNAF AR. He is also the first skin for Springtrap in the game, and I really wish he wasn't. Toxic Springtrap has a repulsive appearance, covered in pale tumor-like warts, tentacle-like veins, some moldy skin patches, and it's letting out gassy fumes, let's say. The infectious-looking traits, including his corpse, were all shaded with purple and indigo tints as a possible throwback to the iconic color of his human form's minigame appearance. You know, purple guy. But I mean, along the same lines as Radioactive Foxy, since they do come from the same event, there is no way that the Foundation is letting this monstrosity out onto the streets, okay? He'd probably have the ability to turn people into creatures like him, be it instantly or slowly, or maybe just a touch would be enough to kill. Like the kiss of death, but you're only 5 feet away from him and then boom, you're dead. And then boom, you're looking for this! 100% classed as a Keter object, and he'd hopefully be contained in a 1x1 by 7 foot glass tube so that I would never have to deal with Afton again, okay? Call this one SCP-1985. But ultimately, in at number 2, Nightmare. Nightmare is a cruel, twisted animatronic who is sadistic in nature. This is apparent in Ultimate Custom Night, where he informs the player of their death in a rather sadistic manner. He also appears to enjoy mocking his victims. Upon getting the chance to do so, he speaks using a deep, monstrous voice, befitting his his name. The name also comes from the fact that these are dreamt up animatronics present in Crying Child's mind after being put into coma by overpowered Fredbear's jaw, and since Fredbear is the one who put Crying Child in the coma in the first place, it makes sense that the Dark Death Omen version is called Nightmare. I mean, this is a representation of death after all, and I think that's what the SCP version of the character would be as well, an omen of death, a bringer of destruction. Anything caught in the shadow of this animatronic would instantly perish due to a crushed skull. This idea coming from the fact that you can see Nightmare's endoskeleton through his casing, making it seem like this endoskeleton is merely encased in shadow. So being in what would be the shadow of this creature, even if it isn't visible, could in my mind end up killing you via a crushed skull. Of course. Call this one SCP-1983. Get it? Cause the bite of 83? Cause FNAF 4 takes place in 1983, damn it. And finally, in at number 1, Glamrock Endo. The Glamrock Endos are the endoskeletons engineered for Glamrock animatronics of Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex and appear in FNAF Security Breach as hostile enemies, appearing in various places all over the map, but most notably in Ports and Service. The Glamrock Endo is a very high-tech version of the original endoskeleton, being gray in color as usual, like the original Mark 1 and Mark 2, but these ones are seemingly much stronger, with broader shoulders and a seemingly more superhero-shaped body. Like when you're drawing the stick figure base for a superhero and you use that like inverted Dorito shape, yeah. These are also seemingly just for the male Glamrock animatronics, since if we're being real, Chica's thick, but she doesn't have massive shoulders like Monty or Freddy. Either way, the mechanic of these animatronics is that they move when the player isn't looking at them. Well, at least after being activated, but hello? That's literally already an SCP mechanic. Peanut, who I mentioned earlier, aka SCP-173, one of the most iconic of all time, like I knew about Peanut before I knew about SCPs, that's the exact way that Peanut acts, just with the exception of not needing activation. So yeah, Glamrock Endos are 100% SCP material. If anything, they already are SCPs. In at 10, SCP-191. SCP-191, also known as the Cyborg Child, is a female human child of unknown age. Well, to us anyway. The Foundation knows, but they haven't redacted. It is believed to have been the test subject of several experimental surgeries performed by a now deceased doctor of unknown name. 80% of the left half of her face and skull have been removed, with the eye and ear replaced by a complex transceiver system that allows it to receive and transmit not only visual and auditory input, but a wider spectrum of electromagnetic radiation ranging from a low-frequency radio to high-energy gamma rays. The lower jaw, teeth, and larynx have been removed as well. The esophagus has been rerouted to an artificial orifice in the back of the neck, which is a feeding tube, and the trachea rerouted directly to an air filtration device. This seems like something that Afton would do in order to keep his family alive or to bring them back from death. Like, this is what's hiding in William's basement, and Crying Child is the Cyborg Child this time around. In at 9, SCP-699. SCP-699 is a clear rectangular case 2.5 meters by 1.5 meters by 1 meter in size. Engraved on the side is the SCP Foundation Keter symbol and SCP-17591. The artifact appears to be made of plexiglass, but it is in fact a super dense polymer much stronger and heavier than any material currently manufactured. The weight of the object is estimated at around 24,000 kilograms. SCP-699 shows no seams in its construction and no obvious means of opening it. It has resisted all attempts to open, damage, or acquire a sample of the material and it is composed of. Attempts to acquire a small sample of the material so that it can be reproduced, though, are still ongoing. Does this sound familiar at all? A strange box that we can't open? Well, how about this? Quote, the contents of SCP-699 are under investigation and currently in dispute amongst researchers. Oh yeah, baby, that's right, the FNAF 4 box! However, the contents of SCP-699 are apparently telepathic and appear different to most observers, depending on their desires and psychological state. So maybe that's what's going on with the FNAF 4 box as well. Perhaps some things are best left forgotten for now. In at 8, SCP-838. SCP-838 is a collective term for a series of job ads appearing in newspapers that print in the vicinity of Chicago, and whatever agency is behind them. The job offered varies between instances and has included positions in accounting, management, management and janitorial work, among others. These ads are entirely mundane unless responded to. Attempts to trace these classifieds have also proven unsuccessful. The next time a person who has responded to SCP-838 falls asleep, he or she immediately enters REM sleep. The affected individual reports experiencing extremely vivid dreams of having a job interview for the advertised job in a large windowless office building. Anyone hired by Pellis Inc., which is the company behind this, is to be considered part of SCP-838-1. Those not offered jobs are unaffected. When members of SCP-838-1 sleep during the week, they report vivid dreams of working in what is believed to be the same building that the interview took place in. In these dreams, the workforce of Pellis seems to consist entirely of people who have responded to these ads. Could this perhaps explain why we keep going back to this same job where we almost die over and over again, and why our alarm is a grandfather clock, and why we only stay until 6 AM? Could this be a real dream brought on by SCP-838? I don't know. Sounds like Dream Theory Level 2. In its 7, SCP-978. SCP-978 appears to be a standard red and black Polaroid Supercolor 645 CL instant camera, with no distinctive identifying marks or damage. SCP-978 operates the same as a standard camera and shows no anomalous behavior beyond the photographs it produces. When a subject is pictured with SCP-978 though, the photograph that develops shows not what the subject was doing at the time of the photo, but rather what the subject wanted to be doing. Unless what they wanted to be doing was what they were doing. Now, unlike 838, I don't think that this would really help explain anything, but the sheer amount of power an object like this would have to someone like William Afton is horrifying. Like, oh, let's take a picture of you and Bonnie. Click, finds out what they really want to be doing. Oh hey, I have the exact thing that you want to be doing in the back room, come follow me. Or hell, even like just us as the player, we can find out what Afton really frickin' wants for once. And maybe we can finally get some goddamn answers. Especially since this works on animals too, so maybe it can work on like spirits? I don't know, the Foundation hasn't tested that yet. They tested it on rabbits. Apparently all they want to do is bang. I'm not kidding, there's actually like a log that talks about them taking a picture of a rabbit, and it was just them mating with another rabbit. In its 6, SCP-423. SCP-423 has no physical form. It appears to exist entirely within textual narratives. It was discovered in a used bookstore in Texas in a copy of Tom Sawyer. The book seemed perfectly normal except for the inclusion of a character named Fred, who was not known to exist in any other version of the story. However, it was not until it was left by a copy of Moby Dick that the anomalous structure of SCP-423 became clear. 423 is able to enter textual narratives, inserting themselves as a minor character. The details of the character vary from story to story, but it is always a character named Fred, or something similar, and its role in the story is usually minor. Physical descriptions of the character are rare, but it usually appears as a human male of average height and middle years. However, this can change depending on the nature of the narrative. But Fred has been a character in FNAF forever, so I mean this doesn't really mean much. So this could honestly just be a fun way of introducing a new character. Or instead, this could be a riff on Jeremy. So that's why there are multiple characters named Jeremy in the series so far. One of them is this Fred guy, but I don't know, it's just a thought. Halfway through into number 5, SCP-309. SCP-309 is a small plush stuffed animal that looks as if it has been turned completely inside out. Gold-orange fur is present along the seams, while a small amount of cotton stuffing and 2 protruding eyes are visible on its head. The interior of SCP-309 is understuffed with cotton, giving it a flexible and cuddly feel. SCP-309 has no effect on inanimate objects, however contact with living subjects is both dangerous and sometimes life-threatening. Humans and animals lightly brushing against SCP-309 with a finger or a similarly small portion of the body display severe, non-localized discomfort for tens of minutes afterwards. Humans also report feeling extreme nausea despite the fact that 309 does not induce vomiting. If SCP-309 is pressed firmly against the subject or the subject quickly picks up SCP-309 and attempts to hold it, the subject will be violently and painfully turned inside out within 10 seconds. Which I feel like at this point is pretty par for the course in FNAF's world, okay? Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. FNAF's world. This could just be a way for William to get out of the goddamn Springtrap suit, honestly. That's what I would use it for. In at 4, SCP-1048. SCP-1048 is a small teddy bear, approximately 33 centimeters in height. Through testing, composition of the subject revealed no unusual qualities that make it discernible from a non-sentient teddy bear. Subject is capable of moving on its own accord and can communicate through a small range of gestures. The subject regularly shows affection to individuals in ways found endearing by most people. Affection is usually given in the form of a hug to the lower leg, but subject has also been observed dancing, jumping in place, and in 2 separate events, it has even drawn childlike pictures for janitorial staff. All Foundation personnel that have interacted with the subject have responded positively to its affection, even D-Class personnel with normally psychopathic tendencies. However, SCP-1048-A is where things wander into FNAF territory. Since 1048-A is a small teddy bear of similar size and shape to 1048, however, this A variant is made completely out of human ears and will go around causing anyone that comes within a 10-meter radius to grow ear-like appendages, extremities, whatever, all over their body. Joy. Do I really need to explain why this should be in FNAF? Maybe William could finally get some flesh on his bones again. Literally. Getting close to the end in at number 3, SCP-053. SCP-053, aka the young girl, appears to be a small 3-year-old girl. She is capable of basic speech and appears to be slightly above average in mental development. She has a generally pleasant personality and rarely seems upset, becoming agitated only in the presence of groups of people. Any and all humans over the age of 3 who make eye contact, physically touch, or remain around SCP-053 for longer than 10 minutes will rapidly become irrational, paranoid, and homicidal. Most, if not all of these feelings will be directed at 053, and afflicted subjects will attempt to kill 053 after first killing or driving off all humans visible to them. Those attempting to kill 053 will suffer massive heart attacks or seizures and die seconds after doing any physical damage to SCP-053. The SCP will also regenerate almost instantaneously from any wound, regardless of severity. So yeah, if her being 3 years old wasn't enough to be in FNAF, since apparently that's like the ideal age for a victim, like Charlotte was, which now that I think about it, this could just be Charlie, but she also causes anyone around her for prolonged periods of time to want to mass murder. So yeah, that's FNAF material if you ask me. Penultimately, in at number 2, SCP-017. SCP-017, aka the Shadow, is a humanoid figure approximately 80 centimeters in height, anatomically similar to a child, but with no discernible identifying features. SCP-017 seems to be composed of a shadowy, smoke-like shroud. No attempt to find any object beneath the shroud has been successful, but the possibility has not been ruled out. SCP-017's reaction to shadows cast upon it is immediate and swift, as SCP-017 leaps at the object casting the shadow and completely encloses it in its shroud, whereupon it returns to its normal size, leaving no trace of the object it attacked behind. And this is the kind of thing that I honestly expect the ghosts to do in the FNAF universe. Like, if we really think about how the ghosts of the original 5 victims would act, I think it would be similar to this. I mean, this is kind of how they attacked Afton, right? Especially if the shadow looks like a small child. It would also fit into the universe in that sense. However, there would also have to be like 5 instances of it, but that's fine. It makes sense to me. And finally, in at number 1, SCP-173. SCP-173, aka Peanut, is probably the most famous SCP out there. It is constructed from concrete and rebar with traces of Krylon brand spray paint. SCP-173 is animate and extremely hostile despite looking like a statue. The object, though, cannot move while within a direct line of sight. Line of sight must not be broken at any time with SCP-173. SCP assigned to enter their container are instructed to alert one another before blinking because there must be at least 2 individuals. Object is reported to attack by snapping the neck at the base of the skull or by strangulation. Personnel report sounds of scraping stone originating from within the container when no one is present inside. This is exactly how Foxy acts in FNAF 1 if you think about it. You have to keep checking in on him to make sure that he doesn't come sprinting at you to break your neck or whatever, however the animatronics kill you. Sure, with Foxy you don't need to have eyes on at all times, but Peanut would basically fit in perfectly in the FNAF world, and he's honestly the reason I came up with and started this list to begin with. So yeah, do it.